When you joined us last week, we took you through some of the most important games in the area, but this time we're going to focus on one, and that's the Friendship at Cooper game. I'm Phil Torino. This is Brian Navarrete. Thank you for joining us on the Lone Star Varsity Weekly High School Football Show. It's presented by Happy State Bank. Brian, we're going to get right into Friendship at Cooper. You cover Friendship very, very closely. I want to know, when you think of this matchup, what comes to mind, just the first thing?
Right off the back, I feel like this game is going to boil down to Friendship's pass defense versus Cooper's pass offense. Friendship gave up 422 yards in the air last week. It just really made a big difference in that game, how many yards they gave up, including 2 touchdowns, 1 for 75 yards plus, I believe. And Cooper's pass heavy. I mean,
sure. Do you think that you mentioned all the the yards that Friendship gave up in its secondary? Is that kind of an area of the team that sometimes people kind of gloss over? It has started 2-0. Do you think people maybe sort of can miss that easily? That there's like perhaps a weakness back there?
Yeah, I think sometimes it can be missed just because they do have 2 standout corners in Diaze Johnson and Broderick Harrell, but sorry.
The differences, I think, between this year's team and last year's team, at least for Friendship, isn't really so much in the back part of the defense. It's more, I guess, the power, on the offensive and defensive lines. That's to me. What do you see, like, difference-wise, between this year's team and last year's?
Definitely size on the offensive line. Last year they had big bodies up there, Grant Caravelli, Matt Spicer. This year they're more of a speedy type offensive line, a lot more pulling, getting to the second level rather than just getting that big first push. On the defensive line, difference from last year, obviously you don't have as many standouts there, but Jacob Peel really impressed last week. He's another big boy, along with defensive end Kyle Barthold, I hope I'm saying that right. Just really stood out last week on that defensive line, which I hadn't expected just because they are a little bit smaller.
I think I'd like to share at least the differences I feel between this year's Cooper team and last year's Cooper team. I think I should preface this by saying we are talking about, I think in my opinion, you may disagree, the 2 best teams in the Lubbock area by head and shoulders. I thought there was a time last year when Estacado could have been in that discussion. I think that's not the case right now, and I don't think there are many other teams that are larger classification that can be discussed with these 2 teams. So you're really talking about 1A and 1B. From Cooper, we saw this team beat Randall last week, which was super impressive because those are probably the 2 5A powers in the region. The difference to me is that this offense looks much more accurate and precise, with Jared Diggy as quarterback. Last year's team, the offense was very aggressive. It was always attacking the line and coming at you. I thought Evan McHugh was really a big, receiving target for Colton Ehlers and, the rest of the team there. This year, I'm just concerned about the running game. I think Seth Watts is super talented. We've talked about actually, he has potential to end up in one of our super teams just because of the quality of player that he is. But I'm just not so sure what I make of the offense yet. And I know that you saw Cooper in a scrimmage as well.
I did, and Seth Watts was impressive. Tough runner, fast kid. He just has that running back vision. But in last week's game, they only had 30-somewhat rushing yards. Watts had -1 rushing yards. Coming into this game, the rushing game is going to be a big question mark for Cooper, I think.
Can you share with us a difference maker? We'll go, Friendship from each of us first and then Cooper.
Okay, yeah, definitely. For Friendship, there was a lot of players that really stood out last week, like Scott McIntyre. Zay Johnson's always a really standout player on both sides of the ball. But I think Tristan Kennard really shined last week as a quarterback, especially taking that position just this year, first year coming back to that position. He passed for 240-plus yards, 3 passing touchdowns, rushing touchdown to win the game late in the 4th quarter. I think he's just going to be a huge difference maker heading into this game. He's fast, tough, and with Jordan Mannon over there,
right,
he's going to be getting touchdowns left and right, I think.
For me, I think the difference, area is going to be the Friendship offensive line, because when you talk about the Cooper defense, it has a couple of FBS level players, particularly on that defensive front that's really strong with Heath Carroll and Kirby Vincent, and then of course you have Josh Quinton there in the linebacking core and some very athletic secondary players. I think Ty Thomas has been superb, getting 18 tackles against Randall. That really, I think, kind of put him on the map in the area. People knew of him because of his last name, but he has demonstrated that aside from making big tackles against Idalou, he can do it consistently. I thought that was really impressive. If the Friendship O-line can sort of help stay consistent, get AWOT positive yardage, I think that'll be huge. How about for Cooper, when you think of a difference maker?
For Cooper, maybe it's receiving core right now coming into it. During that scrimmage, I saw a lot of athletic kids out there catching the ball, just doing big things for them. I can't specifically name any names. Maybe Kyle Reedy.
Yes.
He was really impressive running the ball after catching, as well as Seth Watts at receiver. He plays both receiver and I guess tailback.
Yes.
I saw that during the scrimmage. Jared Dagey, I haven't exactly seen anything as far as rushing, but I know that the kid has some wheels. He can run the ball, and maybe that's something that we'll see in this game more than we have in the past.
That'd be interesting, because Cooper sort of played that down a bit. So that'd be something to definitely watch. As far as my difference makers, I agree that it has to be some of the receiving options. Yes. What's interesting about Cooper is that it does not generally have players that put up huge, big-time gaudy numbers that land players on the super team on offense. Last year, you saw that a little bit with Evan McHugh. We haven't quite seen it yet. I'd love to see who can emerge. I mean, we had, as you know, Jordan Salas was on our first team, the preseason super team. I'd like to know who emerges.
And Jordan Salas did do well last week. I think he had positive receptions, and so that's a name I forgot to mention, but solid receiver.
We definitely couldn't leave this video without making our picks. Brian, I'll go first if you don't mind. I made the same pick on the radio this morning, and I, of course, have to stick with it. I like Friendship by 2 touchdowns in this game.
I also like Friendship, maybe a little bit more than 2 touchdowns for me, and that's only because I don't think the Tigers got 20 points worse from last year, and I don't think Cooper got 20 points better.
You see this analysis right here? You may think, when you think of Pecos, you may think of Cantaloupes right now, but soon you will think of the Pecos graduate, Brian Navarrete, with that excellent analysis. Thanks for that, Brian. That was great.
Yeah, no, definitely. I just want to put it out there. Their offense didn't seem to skip a beat from last year. Ronald Awatt on the outside, he's just a phenomenal runner. Scott McIntyre, he's just pounding it in the middle, and it's just, I don't see any difference from last year as far as offensive strength. Defense, maybe just the pass game. But they do still have the 2 standouts in Zay Johnson and Roger Carroll, who had an interception last week, but it was called back.
Be sure to follow us on all our social media accounts at Lone Star Varsity on Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, and of course, at Friday night, the conclusion of Friday night, we'll have our live Periscope show. We'd love to get some questions for you guys. You can definitely ask them right there on the app, or use hashtag AskLSVarsity on any of our social media. We'll definitely get to those questions. For Brian Navarrete, I'm Phil Torino. Thanks very much for watching.